Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Silverman. I just filmed my second webcast episode with Dr. Vincent Pedre on proven health alternatives. Dr. Pedre, who is the author of Happy Gut, gave a whole list of things on how to heal and keep your gut healthy. He shared with us his personal plight and personal story on how he had a gut problem and how he's now a medical doctor using functional medicine and integrative medicine to help people worldwide get healthy guts. He also shared, as a great takeaway, his care program. Hey everybody, Dr. Rob here with functional medicine practitioner Dr. Vincent Pedre. I'm so happy to have him. He's a busy man. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here. It's wonderful to talk some gut health.
Absolutely. Gut health. That's funny you say that because I bought your book. Before I read your bio, the way I met Dr. Pedre really simply was he was on Good Morning America. He did this incredible 4-minute job on gut. I bought his book, I read his book, and I reached out to him, and we've been in contact since, and he's just a stellar functional medicine practitioner. It's exciting to talk to an MD who, if you will, sees the light and has added that into his armamentarium.
Thank you.
Dr. Vincent M. Pedre is a medical director of the Pedre Integrative Health and founder of Dr. Pedre Wellness. He's a medical advisor to 2 health tech startups, Embody 360 and FullScript, and a functional medicine certified practitioner in private practice in New York City since 2004. He has recently joined the international faculty for the prestigious Institute of Functional Medicine, teaching introductory courses both in Peru and Australia. Those are the first of its like to be taught in functional medicine. That's outstanding. Kudos to that.
Yeah.
He believes the gut is the gateway to excellent health. As the best-selling author of Happy Gut, the cleansing program to help you lose weight, gain energy, and eliminate pain, he has helped thousands of people resolve their digestive and gut-related health issues. Once again, there's the book, everybody. Where can I get it?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere where they sell books, online.
Excellent. Great book. I highly recommend it. I read it myself. And I'm happy to have you once again. So I got a couple of quick questions for you because, I know your story. We've talked, and it's really interesting. You suffered from digestive challenges as a child. Tell everybody all about your gut healing journey.
Oh, wow. I basically had a sensitive stomach since as far back as I remember as a little kid. My mom giving me what was a remedy back then that her father had given her because he was a doctor in Cuba. And it turns out it was a tincture of opium, like some sort of, it was very popular back in the mid 1900s. And I just remember having a very sensitive stomach. And eventually I was put on antibiotics for all sorts of infections, sinus infections, bronchitis, pneumonia. And it just seemed like I just kept getting sick and sick. And as I got into my teenage years, I was probably on 2 or 3 rounds of antibiotics per year. The pediatrician was always saying my immune system is shot. They didn't understand, why do I get sick so often? And I had developed food sensitivities, which I know now looking back. But basically the rounds of antibiotics had completely destroyed my gut microbiome. I had been on Cipro, which can alter your gut microbiome for 12 months. It takes you 12 months to recover from 5 days of Cipro. And I had developed food sensitivities as a result because of leaky gut syndrome. So I was eating the 2 food groups that I was most sensitive to, wheat and dairy. And that was basically the staples in my diet: ice cream, cereal, wheat cereal with milk in the morning. I grew up in Miami, so there were pasteles, which are Cuban pastries. And so I didn't know that I was basically poisoning myself. I couldn't gain weight. I had a really sensitive stomach. It took me kind of a number of years. It was actually first when I went to medical school that I started experimenting with my diet. And the first thing I did is I was more cognizant of dairy, and I stopped eating cereal with milk. And the interesting thing was I noted that I wasn't getting sick as often. And that was the only really big thing that I had changed in my diet, because I still was eating wheat. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. Like, I'm not learning this in medical school, but I'm observing this in my body that when I have less milk, when I don't have ice cream, I'm less prone to catch the viruses and the illnesses that other people have. I started making that connection and thinking there's something to nutrition, even if we're not learning it in medical school. And that probably began my journey of interest into how we can use diet to heal the body. But it wasn't until I got, I was already past medical school and did my training in internal medicine and finally discovered functional medicine and started reading about it, then training. And that's when I really figured out that I had a wheat sensitivity. I'm not celiac disease, but I am sensitive. And so taking wheat out along with dairy, and I did a whole clean out of my diet, worked up with probiotics and lots of organic vegetables, prebiotic foods, eating lots of salads, that I finally started to unravel my gut problems. And up to that point, I thought that I just had a sensitive gut and this was the way I was going to have to live for the rest of my life. But it was that I was putting the wrong things into my body. So it wasn't that I had a sensitive gut, it's that it was sensitive to foods that we've just become toxic to because we're eating in too high quantities. And a lot of people, these are not the right foods for the gut. So I went on this healing journey for myself. And as a result, I became really fascinated with gut health and really started paying attention to patients that came in with gut issues and working on their challenges. And I saw patients start to get better when you address their gut health. And so it just grew from that. And my interests eventually became a passion. And before I knew it, I was a gut expert. And I say that kind of like in quotation marks because I feel that expertise is an ever evolving thing. So I never feel that I've arrived. I'm always open and learning new things because I think you can't close yourself off to learning. But I had a big portion of my practice became gut health. And I started working with patients on their own gut healing journeys. And it's so interesting to go from being my personal journey to then helping others go through their own gut healing journey. And there's no greater teacher, I think, as a medical professional than when you've had to go through a health challenge yourself. And you really understand what it is and what it takes to heal the body and also empathize with what other people go through.
Yeah, I mean, great takeaway. I agree. And by the way, you are a gut expert. So it's like I
always learning. Learning.
You're a true erudite, and that's outstanding. And I agree. I think that the doctors and the practitioners that we work with are learning, and those who aren't, that's the key to life, that we've got to keep learning. But, really the tie-in which you gave everybody, that it was your own personal journey, that must really resonate when you sit with patients. They must understand that you've done it yourself. It's not something you just read in a book and reiterating that it's very personal to you. And, that's very motivating. I'm curious, what led you to write Happy Gut?
It came from multiple reasons, I will say. The first one was that once I started helping people with gut issues and they would refer their friends and friends would refer friends, it just seemed like an endless group of patients out there that didn't know how to heal their gut. And I thought, well, this is not that complicated. And yet people don't have the knowledge to heal the gut. And they're being bombarded with all sorts of marketing for foods that are unfriendly to the gut. And there's so much information out there and so much confusion that I wanted to take what I had learned and synthesize it and help more people than I could possibly ever see as a practitioner, because we're human. We can only see so many people in a day, and helping people with gut health issues does take a lot of time. So it also limits the amount of patients that I can see. But the other part that really motivated me, my mother had passed away in April of 2012. And it was soon after that I wrote the first proposal to my book. And the reason that came up is that after my mom passed, you start thinking about how life just goes in a blip. And I started thinking about the legacy that I wanted to leave behind and what influence I wanted to have in the world. And I wanted it to be greater than what I could do within the walls of my practice. I wanted to reach many more people and give them the knowledge of how they can heal. So that was probably the biggest motivating factor, was thinking about, what is it? What is the signature that I want to leave behind when I'm no longer in this world? And it was a book, and I always felt I had a book in me, and it was just finding the right topic and the voice to write it. And when I finally came up with the idea for Happy Gut, it was funny because it just felt like it was right under my nose the entire time. I had grown up with gut issues. So it just made sense that that was the book that I was supposed to write. And it was both a personal story, but also the story of my patients and their gut healing journey. So that's where the desire to write Happy Gut came from. And it really, when you write something, and I wrote every single word in that book, it does have to come from a higher source, a higher motivation, because it's a hard journey getting a book done. It's a journey of love, and it has to be done for something greater than yourself, or else, you can just falter along the way. So that's where it came from wanting to leave a legacy, but also the desire to help many more people than I could ever possibly see in my practice, and give them the knowledge that they need to heal.
Yeah, I think that resonates in your book. Like I said, having read it, and I think that's a great story. And I agree with you on that. People could be reading your book right now while we're filming this. And, again, I agree with you that you don't write a book for anything other than altruistic reasons, because most people don't know the time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears, and all the skiing weekends, if you will, that somebody could have given up.
Oh, it's a lot of it's definitely working full time. It was a lot of weekends that I gave up. But I will tell you, the 8 months after I published my book, a patient came to see me from Texas, and she had gut issues for over 10 years, had been to some of the top experts in Texas, and no one could figure out her gut issues. She was a prisoner to her home. She didn't have a social life. She couldn't never predict how her gut was going to behave, so she was afraid to go out and eat dinner. But it really affected multiple areas of the life, and that's what you find with gut patients, is that it's not just about the gut, it's about many other aspects of life. But 8 weeks before she came to see me, she had read my book, and she decided to follow the program in the book. And by the time she was in my office, she was probably 80 to 90% better. And she just wanted to meet me because she was so happy. She told me her entire family loves me because they got her back. And that, to me, that one story is the reason I wrote this book.
That's great.
For a person like that, someone who would have never heard of me, would have never thought of coming to see me in New York, or perhaps, couldn't because of financial issues, but could follow the program, and just by doing that, get better than with any other doctor she had worked with before, just from the pages of a book.
Yeah. Everybody's proud when they hear that, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's just, that's the type of person, that's who I wrote this book for.
Yeah.
Those are the people I wanted to help. And she couldn't be, she lost weight. She was able, I kept in touch with her for at least over a year, and she kept maintaining, and she knew if she deviated what she needed to do to get back on course. But it changed her life.
Interesting. That's great. And that's resonating again why people write books, because you can hit people that you can, and the book's, $20 or whatever it may be, and you can reach that population, and that's your goal.
It's so much cheaper than coming to New York to see me. You can get the Kindle book for less than what it costs to pay a copay to go see a doctor. So there's always help. I feel like there's help to be had. It's just people finding the right help and the right direction, and also the book that resonates with you, or the message that resonates with your philosophy and what you think you can do.
I mean, we keep talking about the gut, and for us, we know that it's in our everyday parlance.
Yeah.
However, some of the followers and some of the listeners not right now may not know why the gut is so integral to overall health and performance. So why don't you update them on that?
Well, we can just start with the incredible, almost like additional endocrine organ that lives in the gut, which is our gut microbiome, producing all sorts of neurotransmitters, affecting our hormone balance, affecting our ability to metabolize glucose. So even controlling our weight set point. So starting with the microbiome, and all the research is showing how it affects so many organ systems, from your metabolism to how your brain functions. And then think of all the dysfunction that can happen in the gut and leaky gut syndrome, and you see that inflammation in the gut creates inflammation throughout the whole body. And it's inflammation that you may feel with bloating, stomach pain, maybe constipation, diarrhea. Those could be signs that things are disorderly or out of order in the gut. But what it causes is biochemical inflammation. It's not that you're going to see a joint inflamed, but if your gut is really out of balance, you might have a systemic symptom. So you could get asthma, allergies, migraines, autoimmune disease is connected to the gut. I had a patient come in who had an autoimmune disease called Sjogren's combined with she had autoimmune markers across the board, even rheumatoid markers and lupus markers, and her joints were inflamed. But interestingly, she had no gut symptoms whatsoever. But she was from India and she had traveled and whatnot, and I thought, there could be parasite, there could be something going on. Lo and behold, she had yeast overgrowth in the gut. And this is something that Western and conventional medicine doesn't believe in. You either have a yeast infection or you don't. But to be colonized by yeast in the gut or have some sort of imbalance, it doesn't understand that. But if you look at the gut as this ecosystem, it's like the Amazon. It's as complex, I would say, as the Amazon ecosystem. And if that ecosystem goes out of balance and you have a predator that takes over, and we'll call yeast can be predatory on the body because it produces all sorts of toxins. I mean, yeast can affect your brain health, affects your ability to think. It can cause brain fog. It can cause general fatigue. But in this patient was causing joint inflammation. And maybe it was just the inflammatory reaction in her gut that was just spinning off inflammation in other parts of her body. So when we treated the gut and got rid of the yeast overgrowth, her joint inflammation disappeared and her joint pain disappeared. And before that, she had been to a rheumatologist and been diagnosed with a non-specific inflammatory arthritis, and they wanted to put her on a biological. We fixed her diet. She had read my book, so she was another example of someone who had already started changing the diet before she came to see me. And then we kind of dug in deeper and we found that there was a yeast issue. We dealt with the yeast issue, and I think she might have also had a parasite. So we addressed those issues that were causing inflammation in the gut, and then you saw the benefit throughout the entire body. The reason for that is that 70% of the immune system lies all along the gut lining. So if you put the immune system on alert in the gut, then it's sending system-wide signals that are telling your body to be on high alert. And for a lot of people, that's why autoimmune disease develops, as the body goes on this high alert, and suddenly the self-regulatory mechanisms in the immune system break down. One of the biggest regulators of our immune system is the gut and the microbiome. The good bacteria in the gut actually speak with our immune system and help keep it in check. And some people will even say that it's healthy to have certain types of parasites in the gut because it also keeps the immune system quieted down. And you look at a place like India where there's a higher incidence of parasites in the gut. For a long time, you saw a lower incidence of autoimmune disease over there. Now, as their diet becomes more westernized and perhaps they're using more antibiotics, you're starting to see autoimmune disease rise up. in India, and probably because of that very reason that you start disturbing the very delicate gut ecology. But it's connected to everything in the body. So with anybody with a chronic disease, the starting point is always to work on healing the gut, and then you work on the other aspects. But you want to make sure if there's some imbalance in the gut, that's your starting point. That's where you start to fix the body.
That's fascinating about India and the parasites, and great overview about the gut with the 70% of the immune system is in your gut. Most people don't realize that.
I mean, that's why I was so unhealthy as a child, and why I was getting sick all the time is because my gut was inflamed. It never had a break. I was eating lots of bread, wheat in all forms, and gluten and dairy, and my immune system was on high alert. You know, it's like if you're fighting a major war in your gut, then your immune system can't be in its usual surveillance mode and nip a virus in the bud before it takes and colonizes your sinus tract, because they're fighting a war in your gut. You fix the gut, the immune system is more balanced. Now it can pay attention to all sorts of things coming from different parts of your body, and has a better chance of fighting off infection without it becoming like a severe sinus infection or bronchitis.
How interesting is that? It is an antithesis to the use of antibiotics, if you will.
Well, and the rebuilding of, I mean, what I've realized with the work that I've done is that we really have to be thinking about rebuilding the gut when a patient goes through, has to go on an antibiotic. And for anyone listening, it's not that I'm saying I'm against antibiotics, because I've saved people's lives with antibiotics. And we know people who've been exposed to tick bites and Lyme disease. You need to go on an antibiotic. But the difference of how I do it is that I'm always working on protecting the gut while the person is on antibiotics, and then rebuilding the gut and making sure we're enforcing the microbiome, the gut microbiome, so that it can become healthy again, and we don't create another imbalance as a consequence of having been on antibiotics.
That's a great takeaway, because a lot of people, chiropractors, unfortunately, sometimes no antibiotics whatsoever. And, I have to keep my opinions to myself because I may be outnumbered, but I hear what you're saying and I concur. Antibiotics are a great tool, as long as they're not used prophylactically.
And look, and that said, antibiotics are overprescribed. Mm-hmm. That is a fact. Too many people are prescribed antibiotics, but used in the right way, they save lives. And sometimes you need an antibiotic, and then you have to go back and analyze, okay, what's going on with this person's gut? Why are they getting sick so easily? Let's rebuild the gut. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is they're going to get sick again a couple of months later, and then they'll get sick again. I see those people, and you rebuild their gut microbiome, and then they don't get sick as often.
Now, you've got a system that you developed to balance the gut called the CARE system, because you care about
the gut care.
So
tell
everybody
it's basically an acronym. I wanted to create something that was easy to understand for people. And the acronym CARE, which I think is a great word for caring for self, caring for the gut, stands for cleanse, activate, restore, and enhance. And each part of it is an aspect of the Happy Gut program. So cleansing is about removing the bad bugs from the gut, but also removing all the inflammatory foods and even foods that are pesticide-ridden, GMO foods, everything that is harmful to the gut, food additives, carrageenan. These are the things that have to be removed under cleanse. And then activate is about activating the digestive enzymes. So important. To be able to break down protein, you need the right amount of stomach acid, and then you need the lipases to break down fat, and the amylases to break down carbohydrates, and the proteases for protein. And if these factors aren't balanced or being produced at the right amount, and this happens a lot for people who have a gut imbalance or gut disorder, you need to help come in and support that. It's almost like if you hurt your knee, you walk with a cane. If your gut is hurt, you take digestive enzymes to help bridge the gap until you heal the gut. And then you can go off of them and walk without them. Then restore is all about restoring the microbiome using prebiotics and probiotics. And prebiotics are foods like garlic, onions, greens, dandelion greens, even bananas have prebiotics, and blueberries. And Enhance is all about healing the gut lining. So, most people that have to go through a program like this pretty much guaranteed they have leaky gut syndrome or increased intestinal permeability. So Enhance is about using the right nutrients to help heal the gut lining, and that completes the cycle of healing. And within that, I talk a lot about mindfulness, and I forgot to mention under cleanse, cleansing the mind of negative thoughts, of self-defeating thoughts. That is super important in the healing process, and cleansing yourself of anxiety and stress by mindfulness, by doing yoga, by meditating. You cannot separate, everybody comes in and says, tell me what to eat or tell me what supplements to take. And yet you can tell that they're just running through their life and they're eating lunch on the go and they're in a high stress job. And I call stress the elephant in the room. It's the one component you can't ignore. You could do everything else right. And if you don't manage your lifestyle and your stress, you're going to be moving against resistance when you're trying to heal your gut. So you have to, so my point in my book is that it's more than just about a diet. It's about a whole life program. It's a 360-degree view on your health, mind, body, and spirit.
So it's not just what you're eating.
Yeah, that can work for some people, but if you're in a high stress job and you don't know how to manage your stress and you live a high anxiety lifestyle, you've got to rework that if you want your gut to heal, because that's part of the attack on the gut. And we know that catecholamines, neurotransmitters produced from being in this high stress fight or flight response, increase gut permeability. And they can alter the gut microbiome, and where you're more relaxed, you have a more favorable microbiome and the gut permeability improves. So there's factors that affect the gut, and that gut brain-gut connection that can't be measured. It's not food you eat. It's not a supplement you take. It's just how you live your life and how you take in, how you assimilate stress and how you let it affect you.
So the gut has a relationship to the brain.
Yeah, and we know that, through the vagus nerve, one of the biggest nerves in the body, controls the majority of the digestive system and controls digestive enzyme secretion. And as a chiropractor, that the vagus nerve for a lot of people becomes dysfunctional. And one thing that I find that causes dysfunctional vagus firing is high stress. It turns off the vagus.
Yeah, it's funny that we could talk another couple hours on this. I'm getting a little excited. I may be in the sympathetic response right now, and my parasympathetics are going down and my vagus may shut off, so I may not be digesting. But let me ask you this. What do you think about conscious eating, and why is it so important, and how does it relate to this fight or flight syndrome that so many of your patients have when they have a gut issue?
I was just listening to an Oprah interview with Wayne Dyer, and he had he has a book on conscious eating, and I thought he said something that kind of stuck with me. He said that grace is institutionalized conscious eating. And just think about all the people that, conscious eating is the antithesis of inhaling your food, or what a lot of people do, especially in the middle of the workday. Just eating really fast and then continuing with their work, but they're in this fight or flight. They're in the high stress mode, and you have to rest to digest. So digestion is a relaxed activity. You have to be in the parasympathetic state. And one way to get into the parasympathetic state is to breathe. And another way is to just take a pause and give thanks for the food that you're about to eat. It changes the energy of that moment. So now you're being conscious of what you're about to put into your body, which is so essential for creating the energy in the body. And I think we need a lot more of that in our society. We don't have a lot of conscious eating. Saying a prayer before you eat is just another way to bring consciousness into the process of eating. I'm not saying everybody needs to say a prayer. I mean, it could be just that you pause for a moment before you start eating and take a couple of deep breaths. Just come into the present, let go of everything that's on your mind, all your to-do lists, and just kind of become connected with your body. I mean, that's what conscious eating is. And I think the other element of conscious eating is knowing where your food comes from and understanding that, you know, do you want to treat your body like a Ferrari and put in the highest grade fuel? Or do you want to treat your body like some used car and just give it the lowest grade fuel? And that is a decision that comes through conscious eating, because if you're sourcing your food from the best places and you know where it comes from and that it's pesticide free, and you know that the animals were raised humanely, if you eat animal protein, or it's fish that's wild caught, not farm raised, you know, all of that makes a difference, because that's high grade, high energy food that you're putting into your body, and you're going to get a better result. And if you're putting a lot of junk food, processed food, packaged foods into your body, you're going to get a different result if you're eating fast food. So that also is a very important element of conscious eating, is really being conscious about the type of foods that you choose to put into your body. You know, and again, what type of body do you want? Do you want a Ferrari or do you want a used car?
That's an easy one, my friend. That's an easy one.
I think most people would answer, yeah, I want the Ferrari.
Of course.
But in actuality, most people are not doing that. They're not eating consciously. They're not really caring for what they put into their body. And there's a lot of emotional eating that happens that causes a whole bunch of poor eating choices. And for those people, they need to go to the source of where that's coming from and be present and deal with the emotion, rather than dampen the emotions by eating them eating food so they can numb themselves of those emotions.
Yeah.
You know, so these are all elements of conscious eating.
That's a whole webcast on its own. I agree with you. That's probably one of the tougher things to overcome with the patients, that idea of that impulse, that emotional impulse. So I know everybody wants to know, how does everyone cultivate a healthy microbiome now?
Well, the easiest way is to eat a diet rich in a variety of vegetables and even some fruit, not excessive fruit, but ranging the colors of the rainbow. Because then you're ensured that you're getting the combination of nutrients that your gut microbiome needs to thrive. And not every single strain of bacteria eats the same type of food or feeds off of the same types of fibers. So you need a variety of foods, including, I think for some people, even though my book is gluten-free, but I think there is a benefit to incorporating sometimes a little bit of grains like brown rice or gluten-free oatmeal, because you get all different types of fibers that are helpful for cultivating a healthy gut. And then there's the fermented foods, so you can incorporate sauerkraut. There's so many like now artisanal sauerkrauts that you can have, so it's not like the old sauerkraut that was kind of, honestly, sometimes not the most appetizing, but you can get like turmeric, ginger, dill, sauerkraut, like all sorts of really creative types of fermented foods and fermented drinks for the right people. Like kefir can be very healing for the gut, but for some people it's better to do goat versus berry milk kefir, and kimchi. And then of course probiotics, but probiotics to me are like the cherry on top. You know, they only create a transient residence in the gut. So ultimately, to nurture and create a healthy gut, you have to be eating a healthy diet, rich in these variety of foods that feed the gut microbiome.
So this has been fun. How can everybody get in touch with you, learn more about you, your message, follow you, things of that nature?
Well, best thing is to visit my website, happygutlife.com, and they can join the newsletter there. We put out newsletters pretty frequently on all sorts of health topics, gut-related topics, wellness, weight loss, talk about intermittent fasting, and we're always putting out recipes every month. So some recipe themed by the month of the year. So that's probably the best way to learn more about what I do. And from there, they can link to my Facebook, my Instagram. Always active on there, putting out hopefully enlightening information for the public.
Outstanding. So it's been my pleasure. I hope to do this again. Dr. Vincent Pedre, Dr. Rob Silverman, Proven Health Alternatives.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.